Let me ask you something. Imagine standing inside a stadium that fits 65,000 people. Every single seat is filled. The lights go down. The crowd noise builds into something that doesn't even sound human anymore. It's this massive, living, breathing wall of sound. And then two figures walk out onto the stage, and the entire building simply loses its mind. That's what's about to happen in Tampa, Florida. And if you're not paying attention to what Suga and Jimin are bringing to America right now, you're genuinely missing one of the most extraordinary moments in modern music history. I'm not saying that lightly. I'm not saying it for clicks. I'm saying it because everything that has happened over the last few weeks, from Seoul to Tokyo, from the documentary to the Rolling Stone interviews, from the airports to the stadiums, has been building toward this exact moment. 3 nights, Raymond James Stadium, and 2 of the most compelling artists alive stepping onto American soil with something to prove, something to share, and a story that is honestly too good not to tell. So let's tell it properly. From the beginning. Let's go back to June 2022. BTS makes an announcement that shakes the entire music world. They're going on hiatus. The group isn't breaking up, they make that clear. But mandatory military service in South Korea means that each of the 7 members will have to serve their country, one by one, starting with Jin. The announcement sends shockwaves through the fandom. Army around the world holds its breath. For years. That's how long the wait would be before all 7 members could stand on a stage together again. For Suga, the wait had an extra layer of complexity. He went in last among the members, completing his service in late June 2025. That means he spent years watching his bandmates go in, serve, and come out the other side while he was still waiting, still preparing, still holding on to the vision of what BTS could be when they finally reunited. And in that time, he didn't stay still. His solo work as agustd, the trilogy of mixtapes and albums that represent some of the most raw, honest music in the entire BTS universe, was something he poured his entire identity into. Jimin, meanwhile, had gone in alongside Jungkook through the companion military program, serving in the same unit as his closest friend. When they came out, there was already this energy between them, this sense of 2 people who had been through something genuinely hard together and come out the other side not just intact but stronger. And Jimin, who had already spent years building one of the most devoted solo fan bases in all of K-pop through his albums Face and Muse, returned with a new kind of quiet confidence, a stillness, a readiness. The reunion happened in Los Angeles in July 2025. All 7 members moved into a house together for 2 months, the first time the group had shared a living space since 2019. Think about what that means. These 7 men, who had grown up together, built their careers together, achieved impossible things together, and then been forced apart by circumstances beyond their control, they were together again. Cooking together, laughing together, waking up every morning, and walking into the same studio to build something new. The Netflix documentary BTS, The Return, directed by Baungwin, captured that period. And what it shows is not the triumphant, polished comeback story you might expect. It shows the messiness of real creativity. It shows exhaustion and doubt and disagreement. It shows J-Hope sitting at a dinner table, saying he just wants to have fun making music, but it feels like they're operating like a factory. It shows Jimin frustrated in the early sessions, feeling like they're rushing through something that deserves more time. It shows RM wrestling with deep questions about identity and legacy, and what BTS even means in 2026. And it shows Suga, characteristically quiet, walking into rooms and listening for long stretches before saying anything, but when he speaks, it matters. When he says something, the temperature in the room changes. There's a moment in the documentary that has stuck with everyone who has watched it. The members are debating how much of the traditional Korean folk song Arirang to include in what would become their track Body to Body. There are disagreements. Some members worry it's too direct, too on the nose, maybe even uncomfortable. And Suga is the one who suggests holding the extended version for live performances, that the stage is where that kind of emotional weight will land hardest. It's such a Suga move. It shows you how he thinks about music not just as a recorded artifact, but as a living, breathing experience that happens between performers and an audience in a specific moment in time. He's always thinking about the stage, even in the studio. And then HYBE chairman Bang Si-hyuk steps in with one of the most powerful arguments in the whole film. He asks them to imagine sold-out stadiums around the world singing Arirang. He tells them BTS has far more to gain than lose by fully embracing this. And he's right, because when you watch the footage from Goyang Stadium in South Korea on April 9th, when you see 70,000+ people with their light sticks raised singing a centuries-old Korean folk song alongside the 7 members of the biggest band in the world, it's one of those moments that reminds you why music exists in the first place. The Arirang World Tour launched on April 9th for shows at Goyang Stadium, just outside Seoul. And from the very first night, it was clear that this was not a band that had spent 4 years away from the stage and lost their edge. If anything, they were sharper, hungrier, more intentional. They came back with a 360-degree, in-the-round stage design, meaning there is no bad seat in the house. Every single person in that stadium sees all 7 members up close, from every angle. It's an architectural statement about their relationship with their fans. No hierarchy, no good side and bad side. Everyone gets to be at the center. Suga was on that stage. Jimin was on that stage. And together with the rest of BTS, they delivered 4 nights that set the tone for everything that followed. Then came Tokyo. The BTS Arirang World Tour arrived at Tokyo Dome on April 17th and 18th. And it was, by any measure, a homecoming. BTS hadn't performed in Japan since July 2019. 7 years. And Tokyo Dome, one of the most iconic concert venues in the world, was sold out for both nights. 111,000 fans over the 2 evenings. 111,000. But here's what made Tokyo special, what made it different from every other concert on this tour so far, what turned it into a global conversation almost immediately. Japanese copyright law prohibits recording at concerts. It's strictly enforced, with security actively watching for anyone raising a phone to film. And so when the cameras cut to wide shots of the audience at Tokyo Dome, what you saw was not a sea of glowing phone screens. What you saw was a sea of army bombs, the official BTS light sticks, and handmade support posters. 70,000 people watching with their eyes instead of through a screen. The reaction on social media was immediate and overwhelming. Fans from around the world called it the most beautiful concert atmosphere they had ever seen. RM stood on that stage and talked about how moved he was. He said that in this era of everyone reaching for their phones, the Japanese fans gave them something no one else had. Suga and Jimin were part of that night. They performed Not Today and Mic Drop with the raw power that those songs were always meant to carry. They brought out Crystal Snow and For You, Japanese language tracks from 2017 and 2015, and the crowd sang every word back at them. Songs that are nearly a decade old, performed to an audience that had not seen BTS in 7 years, and the connection was instant and absolute. That doesn't happen unless you've built something real. That doesn't happen unless the music means something beyond its chart position or its streaming numbers. At the end of the second night, Jimin read a letter he had written. He said that it had been a long time since his last visit. He said he was grateful to be back. He promised that he would work harder to show fans more and more beautiful stages. He said it in Japanese, and 65,000 people in that dome felt every word. Suga, J-Hope, and Jimin returned to Gimpo Airport in Seoul together on the afternoon of April 18th. They were photographed arriving back, and the images circulated instantly. 3 members, same flight home, the quiet aftermath of something enormous. The other 4 members stayed behind in Japan for individual schedules. But those 3 came home together, and there was something about that image that felt significant. These are not just colleagues. These are people who have been through more together than most people experience in an entire lifetime. And then almost immediately, they were turning around and heading to America. Now let's talk about who Suga and Jimin actually are in the context of this tour, because I think that matters for understanding why their presence in Tampa is so specifically electric. Suga is the architect. He's the one in the studio who listens when no one else is listening, who sits with a guitar and feels a track until he understands it completely, who mediates disagreements between members because he sees the full picture clearly. His solo work as agustd is some of the most honest music ever made by a Korean artist, deeply confessional, technically brilliant, emotionally unguarded in a way that is almost uncomfortable to listen to because it's so real. His 2023 album D-Day is a masterwork. His production on the Arirang bonus track Come Over, released exclusively on the deluxe vinyl, shows a musician who never stops refining his craft. In the Rolling Stone interview from April 16th, he talked about what it means to live under public scrutiny. He said it simply, his job is to live under people's eyes. It's not always comfortable, but he doesn't look at other people's opinions of him, and so it doesn't feel that hard. There's a clarity in that statement that is so distinctly Suga. He doesn't perform unbotheredness. He has genuinely arrived at a place of peace with who he is and what he does. And that kind of artist, grounded, certain, present, is the kind of artist who can command a stadium. When Suga talks about the Arirang album, he says their biggest priority was to pursue a sound they had never presented before. He talks about writing a lot and then cutting back, about the difficulty of that process, but also about the satisfaction. He calls it a well-made pop album. He says rather than pushing one specific track, he cared about the overall balance and the alignment of many different opinions. That's not just a producer talking. That's a leader who has learned over 15 years how to make 7 very different people point in the same direction. And then he says something in that interview that floored me. He says if BTS has the will, he thinks they can keep going into their 70s and 80s. Not performing from a rocking chair, he acknowledges they might not be able to do it the same way they do now. But he says they could find different forms. Because the bond is real. Because after everything they have been through together, they are like comrades, like family, and that kind of relationship doesn't expire. Jimin is the soul. That's the only word for it. He is the member who, in the BTS, the Return documentary, says at the end of their LA sessions that he wishes they could stay longer, that he was happy there, in that house, making music together every day. He's the one who sits in silence for 30 minutes in a recording session, taking in everything everyone else has said, and then steps up to the microphone and delivers a take that incorporates every single note of feedback perfectly. Producers on the Arirang album have talked about this quality in Jimin, this patience, this listening, this ability to synthesize and then execute. It's extraordinary. His solo journey has been defined by a refusal to compromise on artistic vision. His album Face in 2023 was one of the most emotionally brave solo debuts in K-pop history. His follow-up, Muse in 2024, showed an artist who was deepening rather than simply expanding. Like Crazy hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, the first time a Korean language track had ever done that. And when BTS were being pressured by label executives to include more English in the Arirang album, Jimin was visibly frustrated in the documentary. He didn't want to perform in a language he didn't feel at home in just to satisfy commercial targets. He wanted authenticity. He wanted the music to be real. In the group Rolling Stone interview for the May 2026 issue, Jimin said something that has stayed with me. He said that all his teammates are so amazing that he feels the need to improve his own worth as a fellow member. Think about that for a second. This is a man who has a Billboard Hot 100 #1 solo, who sold out world tours under his own name, who has one of the most devoted fan bases on the planet, and he still feels pulled to be better because of the people around him. That's not insecurity. That's a different kind of thing entirely. That's someone who is genuinely inspired by their environment, who uses excellence nearby as a fuel source rather than a threat. When Jimin and Suga are on the same stage, there's a specific energy. Suga is cool in the most literal sense, controlled, precise, technically devastating. Jimin is warm, emotional, magnetic in a way that pulls the entire room toward him. They balance each other. They always have. And in the context of this reunion tour, where every performance carries the weight of 4 years of absence, that balance becomes even more powerful. Tampa, Florida, Raymond James Stadium, April 25th, 26th, and 28th. This is not just the first stop of the North American leg. This is the first time BTS has performed in the United States as a complete 7-member group on this reunion tour. This is the moment that American Army has been waiting for, not for weeks or months, but for 4 years. 4 years of solo releases and military countdowns and Weverse posts and fan projects and everything that ARMY does to stay connected to artists they love even when those artists are not available in the usual ways. 4 years of holding on. The tickets sold out in hours. Every single show. Tampa, which is not typically the most expensive secondary market for major tours, still commanded prices that reflected just how hungry the fan base is. People flew in from across the country. Fans from outside the United States made Tampa their American destination for this tour. The city closed off Tampa Bay Boulevard starting April 22nd to set up a BTS merchandise tent that fans have been lining up at since the early morning hours. The city itself lit up in purple to welcome them. Even the airport. Think about what that means for a city like Tampa. This is a city known for its sports teams, its beaches, its warmth. And for 3 nights in late April 2026, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes the epicenter of a global cultural moment. It becomes the city where the biggest band in the world opened their American comeback, where Suga rapped with the ferocity that only he possesses, where Jimin delivered the kind of performance that people will describe to their children, where the 360-degree stage turned Raymond James Stadium into something that felt less like an arena and more like a ritual space, something communal, something shared, something that transcended the transaction of buying a ticket and watching a show. Suga himself has talked about how BTS has shifted in this era. He said in Rolling Stone that in the first 10 years, they were too competitive, too focused on achieving goals without caring enough about their physical and emotional health. He said now they can relax a little. Now they can have more fun. And there is something profoundly compelling about watching artists who spent their entire young careers in a state of relentless ambition finally arrive at a place where the joy is as important as the achievement. That looseness, that genuine happiness to be back doing this together, comes through in the performances. It comes through in every moment of stage chemistry that gets captured and shared by fans around the world. Jimin, in the Arirang session footage, looks at the other members during that dinner conversation in Los Angeles and says he's worried they're rushing something that deserves more time. That instinct, to protect the quality, to not let urgency compromise the work, is the same instinct that makes him so compelling as a live performer. He doesn't coast. He doesn't phone it in. Every night on this tour, every show at every stadium, he is bringing the same standard he brought to the day he walked into that recording session in Los Angeles and sat in silence for 30 minutes before delivering a perfect take. There's a detail from the Arirang documentary that I keep coming back to. The members are watching old footage of themselves, early BTS, performing in small venues, handing out flyers for free concerts, the scrappy beginning before any of this was possible. And watching that footage is what pulls them out of the slump they're in during the LA sessions. It reminds them of what got them here. It reminds them that grit and hard work were always the foundation, and that those things haven't gone anywhere just because the venues got bigger and the streaming numbers got larger. When Suga and Jimin take that stage in Tampa, they carry that footage with them. They carry every small venue, every flyer, every practice that ran until midnight, every moment of doubt that they pushed through anyway. They carry the military service. They carry the solo careers they built while they were apart. They carry the documentary footage and the Rolling Stone covers and the Tokyo Dome crowd singing back at them without phones in the way. They carry all of it, and they bring it to Florida, and they lay it down on a stage that 65,000 people are watching from every angle. Suga proposed that the outtake songs from the Arirang sessions, the ones that didn't make the album, should be saved for solo projects. He said they'd use them between themselves rather than give them away. It's such a telling statement about how he thinks about the relationship between BTS as a group and BTS as 7 individuals. They are not the same thing, and they are not in competition with each other. The group makes the solo work richer. The solo work makes the group work richer. Everything feeds everything else. And Tampa is a moment where both of those things are present simultaneously. 7 people who have built extraordinary individual careers showing up together to remind the world what they look like when they're pointing in the same direction. Let me tell you something about what this means for American Army specifically. The American fan base for BTS is enormous and fiercely dedicated, but it has also spent the last 4 years in a particular kind of limbo. Solo comebacks meant travel and streaming and support campaigns. Military discharge dates got tracked obsessively. Every piece of content, every Weber's post, every airport photo, every interview clip got analyzed and celebrated and shared because it was all there was. American Army kept the love alive through a gap that would have defeated most fan bases. And now they're getting 3 nights in Tampa. 3 nights before the tour moves on to El Paso, to Mexico City, to Stanford, to Las Vegas, to New York, to Chicago, to Los Angeles. But Tampa is first. Tampa is where the American chapter of this story begins. One college, Student described trying to stay off social media after buying her ticket for the final Tampa date so she wouldn't see setlist spoilers. She said she was excited to see what they would bring after coming back from the military. She said they are very experimental, but also very consistent. They have a sound, and you can recognize it. That's such a precise description of what BTS does. They can sound like Tame Impala on one track, and like early 2000s hip-hop on another, and like a traditional Korean folk song on a third, and somehow all of it sounds like BTS. That's not something you manufacture. That's something you earn over 15 years of making music together. Suga told Rolling Stone that he grew up listening to Eminem and Kendrick Lamar. That hip-hop in America feels like it's in a transitional period right now, maybe a little stagnant, but that it will come back because music always cycles. He said he's very sad about talented young artists who have passed away. He specifically mentioned Juice WRLD. This is a man who has spent his entire career studying American hip-hop with the same seriousness that a doctoral student brings to their dissertation, and who has taken everything he learned and filtered it through his own experience and identity to create something that sounds like nothing else. When he stands on that stage in Tampa and delivers his verses, he is not performing a version of American music back at Americans. He is presenting something that grew out of American music but became entirely its own thing, Korean, personal, and completely him. Jimin is bringing something different but equally specific. He is one of the greatest live performers alive, full stop. His command of the stage, his ability to shift between technical precision and emotional openness within the same performance, his relationship with the audience. It is something that photographs and videos cannot fully capture. You have to be in the room. You have to feel the air change when he moves. The ARMY, who are in Raymond James Stadium for those 3 nights, will feel something that the rest of us can only witness secondhand through fan cams and live streams. And even those secondhand records will be extraordinary. The city of Tampa will not be the same after this. That sounds like hyperbole, but it isn't. Places that host moments like this carry them. The fans who were there will carry them. The people who watched from outside the stadium, who follow the tour merchandise tent on Tampa Bay Boulevard, who saw their city turn purple for 3 days, they will carry it. And Suga and Jimin, 2 men who came through military service and solo careers in years apart, and a reunion that could have been messy but wasn't, who stood in a documentary and showed the world what making music honestly actually looks like, who flew from Tokyo to Florida with 111,000 voices still echoing somewhere in their memory. They will carry it too. This is not the end of something. It's barely even the beginning. The Arirang World Tour runs through March 2027. There are 34 cities and 82 shows and hundreds of thousands of people who haven't yet had their moment. But Tampa is where it starts for America. Tampa is where BTS comes for America. And after everything, after the hiatus, after the military, after the documentary, after Tokyo Dome, after all of it, Tampa is where Suga and Jimin show up and remind everyone exactly why they waited. Nothing about this will ever be the same again. And that is exactly the point.